Hey y'all, we are having cheeseburgers. I had to think there for a second. We're having cheeseburgers for supper tonight. And that means the first thing I need to do is get buns ready. I've not bought hamburger buns in a while. I found this recipe, tweaked some things on it, made it just like we like it, and store-bought buns just don't compare. Plus, it's pretty easy. If you're new to wanting to make bread at home, this is a great recipe. I use this for hamburger buns, hot dog buns, dinner rolls. This exact same recipe, just shape it different. So it's a good recipe to have. And maybe you already make your bread at home. You just maybe want to try another tried and true recipe. This is a good one for you. It is a yeast bread recipe. I like to do sourdough recipes sometimes. I like to do yeast bread recipes sometimes. And I just really love the way these buns taste. Plus, they come together pretty easy. You've got to do 2 rises, hour to 2 hours a piece. But it's not a whole long, drawn-out process that takes all day long. And the hands-on portion of it is just a few minutes. So let me get you where you can see. We'll get these going, get it mixed up, and let them start rising for the first time. Y'all, Audrey made, I was trying to remember what it was. She made something that used sourdough discard in it. And I think it was something sweet. And I cannot remember what it was. It was a month or so ago. And some of it got on my mixer. And that stuff is like concrete. I cannot get it to come off. Every time I wipe my mixer down, I try and I get a little bit here and there. But I cannot get it to come off. If you've got any tips, let me know, because it is on there good. It is not wanting to come off. Alright, so the first thing I do is I start with the whisk attachment. And you can do this by hand. I'm using my KitchenAid mixer. But you could do this by hand. It would just, you would have to knead it a little bit longer. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. And I'm going to get me a cup of warm water. I try to get my water to around 100 degrees. Sometimes I'll use a thermometer to check it. Sometimes I just do it by feel. And I'm going to take a packet of yeast and add that in. I want to get to Sam's or somewhere where I can get a big container of yeast. But what I usually get are these packets, the Great Value packets of fast rising instant yeast. And then 3 tablespoons of sugar. This is the first time I'm going to try it with this coconut sugar. I usually just make it with regular white sugar. But I wanted to try this to see how they do. So I'm going to try that out today. 3 tablespoons of sugar. 4 tablespoons of melted butter. Then I need 1 egg. Let me show you our beautiful eggs that we've been getting. We can pick one out together to use. Look how pretty they are. Let's see if I can pick this up and show you without dropping them. That might be dangerous, but let's see. Y'all, look at that. Which one do we want to use? Tell you what, I think I'm going to get one of the olive green ones right here off of my twirly egg holder. I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of olive oil. And I'm going to go ahead and put in half of my flour. So I'm going to be using 3 cups of flour total. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 1.5 cups. I'm also going to put an apron on before I start messing around with this flour. I'll move you too and bring you around here where you can see down into the mixer. Now, I don't weigh my flour. I've just kind of gotten used to what it looks like in this particular measuring cup. And I know what consistency I'm looking for. So I'm going to show all that to you. So I'm going to go ahead and put half of my flour in, about half of my flour. And I'm going to put my salt in on top of that flour. I used to not do this. I don't know if it makes a difference. I'm using about a teaspoon of salt. But I have seen a couple of places where people say to not put your salt directly on top of your yeast. So I usually put half my flour in and then put the salt on top of that. I don't know. I don't know that it makes a big difference, but it's what I've been doing lately. And I go ahead and use my whisk attachment for this to get it mixed in really well, and then I'll swap over to my dough hook before we put the rest of the flour in. Y'all, this smells so good. Now, my dough came together perfectly today. If it is still too loose, and I know I've used my full 3 cups of flour, one, you may need to just mix it a little bit longer and let the structure start to form. Or, if you know you've put the right amount of flour in, and you've worked it long enough, and it's still just not quite where you want it, what I usually do is I'll put in maybe another 1/4 cup of flour and then knead it enough just to combine it, and usually that will get my dough in a place where I can handle it well. I'm putting a little bit of oil in the bottom of my mixing bowl. I'm going to take my dough and make it into a nice ball. I'm going to rub it. Let me get you where you can see. I'm going to take it and rub the top side of it in the oil and kind of rub the oil all over the sides of my bowl so that this doesn't stick as it rises. Form it back into my nice little ball and put it down in there. Now, my ball of dough is coated in oil, and so is the sides of my bowl. Now I just need to cover this and put it somewhere warm for 1 to 2 hours until it's doubled, and we'll come back and shape our buns. In the summertime, I can usually just cover this and leave it sitting on my countertop. If it's a little bit cooler, I'll turn the light on in my oven and put it in there. I think that's what I'm going to do today just because that works so well. All right, I'll see you in a bit when it's time to shape the hamburger buns. This has been rising for just a little over an hour, and look how beautiful. The time's going to vary depending on how warm it is, those kinds of things, but this was just in my oven, the oven not on, just the oven light on, and it looks beautiful. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this into 10 pieces to make 10 buns. You can do it whatever size you want. That's one of the wonderful things about making the bread yourself. If you want a big hamburger bun, you can do that. If you want a smaller one, you can. When I do dinner rolls, I usually divide it up into 12 pieces. Sometimes if I want a big hamburger bun, I'll just divide it into 8. We're going with 10 today, I think. I didn't put my apron on. That's about right. Let's see how much flour I end up with all over me. I've got my baking sheet with some parchment paper on it, and I'm going to go ahead and divide this out, and then I'll shape the hamburger buns. I have a scale. I could get the scale out and weigh them and make sure they're all exactly the same, but you know, sometimes I feel like doing that and sometimes I don't. There are a couple of different ways you can form your hamburger bun. Some people just take it, push from the bottom, tuck it in, and pinch it off. I like for mine to be a little bit tighter, so I'll find a spot that doesn't have any flour, and I'll cut my hand around it. Oh, that's got too much flour right there. Let me try over here. Find a spot where you can get some tension. It wants to grab on the surface a little bit, and I just cut my hand around it and roll it around, and that pulls it pretty tight on the top. I'm just going to go ahead and do that with all of these. What? Alright, I got all of my hamburger buns on my baking sheet, and I'm just gently pressing the top down a little bit to give them that hamburger bun shape. Not flattening them, just gently pressing down the top to give them a little bit of that shape I want. And then I'm going to cover these up, and they're going to rise one more time. I probably let these go a little bit too long this time, but nah, they'll be all right. They'll be just fine. You want to let them double in size. They roast pretty quickly in my oven with the light on. Now I've got some milk that I'm going to brush over the top. You can do an egg wash as well. This helps them get nice and golden brown on the top. It'll also help our sesame seeds stick, because I'm going to sprinkle some sesame seeds over these. It's completely optional. Like I said, this helps them get nice and golden, and then we just like the sesame seeds. Feels a little fancy, a little fancier. Sometimes we put them on, sometimes we don't. I'm going to go ahead and put it on these. I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to put these in for about 15 minutes. It really is as simple as that. I'm going to show you what these look like when they come out of the oven, and putting our cheeseburgers together tonight. But that recipe is pretty simple, and once you've done it a couple times, it almost feels like you can do it with your eyes closed, and it is delicious. I'm telling you, it's very good. You'll never want to go back to store-bought hamburger buns or hot dog buns or dinner rolls, because like I said, I use that recipe for all of those things. Here they are right out of the oven. Look how beautiful, and they smell so good. Now, bread is one of those things that for a long time I had trouble figuring out, is it done, is it not done? So something I've started using is a thermometer and checking the temperature on the inside. If it's around 200, that's usually the consistency that we like our bread. So these are going to be for our cheeseburgers tonight. Oh, it smells so good in here.